You are listening to The Central Cast, a podcast for mystics and misfits just like you, recorded every week in Pasadena, California, before a live audience. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, not every week. Well, welcome to another gathering of Antifa Church. That'll get you in trouble, saying something like that today. Of course, I'm kind of joking, but kind of not, right? Basically, any group, any gathering that is critical of the current situation, you know what I mean by that, is now being labeled Antifa, anti-fascist, But it's been another crazy week in the news, hasn't it? And I don't know about you, but it's so easy to feel lost, despairing, frightened, confused, angry, the whole gamut. I'm feeling all that lately. And so I want to talk today about what we can ground ourselves in and find strength and resiliency in, of course, as not just anybody, but through our faith, perhaps, through our spiritual community or through our religion. One of the things that keeps giving me strength and courage is knowing that we're on the right side of history. That's not a very religious idea at all. But one of the things that keeps giving me strength and courage is knowing that we're on the right side of history and that our children, one of mine right there, and our grandchildren and generations to come, when they study this time period, I believe will admire. They will take note and be inspired by what we do now. They will appreciate us standing up for basic civil liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, our resistance against tyranny, and our commitment to human rights for all, especially those on the margins, right? Trans folks and, of course, migrants. Just like we remember today, those who fought for civil rights in the 1960s, those who resisted the Nazis like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the Confessing Church, those who were abolitionists in the 19th century. We remember them, do we not? The list goes on. And yeah, we might not be in dire straits exactly like they were, not yet, perhaps. But it still takes integrity and courage to stand up today the way we're standing up. And so I think we can be confident that posterity will remember us well, that we took a stand. And in this, I find inspiration, hope, and strength. And I hope you do too. I think having a historical perspective on who we are and where we stand in history compared to others, it's important to keep in mind, to find inspiration and strength in this today. I believe it is. But there's other sources of strength for me as well. I saw a meme this last week online. I think it was TikTok. Yes, I watch TikTok. Emily thinks that's hilarious because I'm old. I don't know. But I'm only 49. Thank you. I'm addicted to TikTok. I'm sorry. I am. I saw this great meme on it. And I can't remember exactly what it said. It was targeted, it was mocking ICE, okay? But it went something like this. You are the improbable and astonishing result of millions of years of evolution on the only planet that we know of in the universe with intelligent life on it. You get to be here for only a few decades, a mere blip in cosmic history. And this is how you choose to spend your one shot at existence? Ripping families apart because of imaginary lines on the ground? Come on, you're embarrassing yourself, right? It was a great meme. And I thought it was really powerful. Not because I think anyone in ICE will see it or think twice about what they're doing. Memes like this are only persuasive to those who already are persuaded. You know what I mean by that, right? These are created for those like the creators of the meme, for those already persuaded, for those who already think this way. And that's okay. But I thought it was such an interesting point because I think we could apply it to ourselves too, meaning those of us in the resistance. And by that, I mean, we are so much bigger than this moment in history. We really are. We are the improbable and astonishing result of millions of years of evolution on the only planet in the universe that we know of with intelligent life on it. We get to be here for only a few decades, a mere blip in cosmic history. And this is how we are choosing to spend our one shot at existence, fighting for human rights, a better world for all, and the triumph of love, tolerance, inclusion, and peace between all people everywhere, especially those who have been historically maligned and harmed because of their race, ethnicity, color, gender, and class. That's a way of making the most out of our one shot of existence, I think. We're not embarrassing ourselves. That's a way of taking this amazing thing called life and being seriously, making the most of it, not squandering our inheritance, so to speak, or squandering our magnificence, our beauty, our innate beauty and magnificence as living beings. And what I'm really talking about here is a kind of religious and spiritual sensibility today. What I really want to talk about, a religious and spiritual sensibility that can guide us and help us and strengthen us in times like these. And to be clear, a spiritual or religious sensibility does not have to have anything to do with traditional religion as it's understood. It doesn't have to do with traditional religious beliefs or the various tenets and doctrines of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, whatever, pick your religion. One can have a religious or spiritual sensibility without even believing in God, I think. It can really just be about recognizing the profundity of our existence and our innate beauty and our infinite value. I love the insights of the late Gabriel Marcel, a 20th century French philosopher, who talked about how we are not just that which contemplates the infinite. We are the infinite itself. We are not just that which contemplates ultimate reality, but we are ultimate reality itself. When we ask, what is consciousness? It's always me and my consciousness asking, what is consciousness? When we ask, what is the universe? It's always me as part of the universe asking, what is the universe? So we are not just, tiny creatures on a tiny rock floating out in an infinite sea of nothingness, but we are also, we are the universe and the cosmos itself contemplating itself. This is true. In the same way that a tiny wave on the ocean surface may appear as separate and distinct from the ocean, it's really not. It is the ocean itself. In the same way, we are the oceanic mind of God, the oceanic cosmic consciousness that undergirds all things. How's that for a mind job on a Sunday morning? But it's true, I believe. The evidence points to that. I think we know it in the very fabric of our being as conscious, living, sentient beings able to ask these questions and sit here and ponder such things. And I think that story, and it is a story, it's a good story. That story, if we fully metabolize it and let it inform our worldview and how we look at ourselves and others, that story, that truth will give us such strength, such courage, such resiliency in the face of hard times like these. Because we know who we are. We know who we are. And we know what's right and wrong. And we know we are so much bigger than this moment in history and anything the regime can do. And whatever challenges this moment might hold for us. This is what I mean by a religious and spiritual sensibility that transcends the organized religions of our world. I'm also defining this religious and spiritual sensibility today the way the late Paul Tillich did. You might have heard that name before. Paul Tillich was a very prominent Christian theologian and philosopher of the 20th century. He described religion as ultimate concern. His term, ultimate concern. Religion can be understood as whatever we are ultimately concerned about, meaning our deepest held values and convictions. This, of course, can take a variety of different forms. It doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with religious traditions or theology or beliefs about God or the afterlife. I'm reminded of the story of Khalid al-Assad, who was a Syrian archaeologist who was beheaded by ISIS in 2015 because he refused to tell them where he hid all the ancient art and artifacts of the ancient city of Palmyra. ISIS wanted to acquire the stuff so that they could sell it on the black market and fund their war effort, their campaign of cruelty. And Khalid al-Assad, being the chief archaeologist, curator of the art and artifacts of the ancient city of Palmyra, knew where it was all hidden, and he refused to tell him. Days of torture, eventually beheaded in public. Now, some would say, why in the world would you give up your life for a bunch of old stuff? Some might say that. Why would he endure days of torture and eventual execution to protect a bunch of ancient art and artifacts? Why? Who would do that? Consider that they weren't just things for him. They were his ultimate concern, you might say. They were symbolic of everything he held dear. The history of his people, the splendor of their culture and history. It also represented his life's work and what gave him meaning and joy. I'm sure he felt like he wouldn't be able to forgive himself if he gave up all those things to murderous bastards like ISIS. So that's why he was willing to give up his life. And my guess is we all can understand and respect his reasons. This was his ultimate concern. On the face, it had nothing to do with religion. But underneath the surface, it is the very heart of religion itself. And for some, their ultimate concern is their actual religious beliefs, and they're willing to die for it. I'm reminded, of course, of how so many Christians, and I tried to figure out this week how many Christians were martyred in the 1st and 2nd century at the hands of the Romans. Nobody really knows. Could be hundreds of thousands. Nobody really knows. If you go to Rome today, I was there in 2006, another lifetime ago. But I went to the Colosseum, and in the middle of the Colosseum in Rome is a cross. Why is it there? It's there to commemorate how many Christians lost their lives in the arena. Not just in that arena, but all over the Roman world. Christians were routinely, sent into the arena to be devoured by animals, other crazy things. But hundreds of thousands probably of Christians between the 1st and 2nd century lost their lives at the hands of the Romans because they refused to worship the emperor. Thanks, Bob. And these Christians were often very willing to go to their death. In fact, history tells us that some were even happy about it because they believed that they would not only be resurrected like Christ, but that their reward in heaven would be all the greater because they suffered a martyr's death like Christ did. It's also likely that they believed that if they recanted their faith and denied Christ in order to save their own skin, that they would lose their salvation and go to hell. Awful theology. Let's be clear about that. I got some real problems with Christian martyrdom in the ancient world because of the terrible theology that often undergirded it. So on one hand, I pity them because I think in some ways they died needlessly or for the wrong reasons. But on the other hand, I have the utmost respect for them and anyone who is willing to give up their life for what they love and what they value, especially as an act of resistance against tyranny like ancient Rome or ISIS in the case of Khalid al-Assad. Anyone who loses their life for resisting tyranny, whether it's for ancient artifacts or for their religion, has my respect. But again, both are examples, I think, of what religion is. Ultimate concern. It's our ultimate concern. What moves you most? What are you most convicted or committed to? Now, is that all religion is? No, of course not, right? Religion doesn't have a singular definition. It has lots of definitions. But that's a big part of it, I think. The question, of course, becomes, what are your ultimate concerns? What are your highest convictions, you might say? Your ultimate convictions? What are your deepest held beliefs, values, and convictions? What are you willing to die for, maybe? No one knows until they reach the moment of truth. I get it, but these are interesting questions today in our context. And I'm guessing for most of us, we would say that our ultimate concerns are things like love and justice, equality and equity, the breaking down of historically oppressive and bigoted systems and ideas that detract from human well-being. It's building community. It's our relationships with family and friends. If we're parents, it's our children, even when they're being a little distracting. Or if you're metaphysical like I am, perhaps one of your ultimate convictions is this idea that we are transcendent and cosmic beings of infinite beauty and value. I love that. I'm kind of metaphysical and mystical. And I think it's these things that can guide us through the toughest times of life and challenging moments in history like this one, where we're scared, we're deeply troubled, we're stressed, we don't know what's coming next. They very well might come after us, especially because we're an Antifa church, right? I don't know. I don't know. And not knowing is a little scary. I can tell you one thing, the rhetoric is there. They want us. They want to get us. There's no question. Will they be able to? I don't know. But this is where we're at. This is reality. How do we face the future? How do we move into the future collectively? How do we resist? How do we keep up the pressure? How do we find the strength, the energy, the wherewithal? We need these kinds of technologies, meaning spiritual and religious technology. We need to be firm about our ultimate concerns, our convictions. This being, what I'm saying today is not new. I'm going to be very clear about that. This isn't Aaron's brilliant thoughts from the week. This is actually quite timeless and ancient and universal. And this being Indigenous Peoples Day weekend, aka Columbus Day weekend, right? I think we should take a moment to consider how our Indigenous brothers and sisters thought of religion and spirituality. When Columbus and the Spanish first arrived in the New World 533 years ago this weekend, they spoke of the people here as having no religion at all, no knowledge of God, but as being wholly irreligious. Now, of course, the Indigenous people of the Americas had rich spiritual lives and traditions, but their spirituality looked nothing like European Christianity. And because so, it went unnoticed. It was deeply misunderstood. It went unseen. And so they were labeled religionless and godless, which of course made it all the more easier for the Spanish to convert them and to exploit them and to dehumanize them in a myriad of ways. Right? We know this. This is the way European Christians have viewed people of color and Indigenous folks for centuries, including in American history, U.S. history. Right? We know that. I think it's worth mentioning that not much has changed in 500 years. We still have white Christian men ripping Indigenous families apart in the name of God and country today. They don't go by the name conquistador anymore. We have the ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, etc., which I think raises all kinds of questions about why is whiteness and European Christianity so imperialistic and violent? I have some real questions about that. What is it about whiteness and European Christianity that is so historically imperialistic and violent? But I digress. What Columbus and his men discovered without really knowing it was that Indigenous religions in general were fully integrated into daily life, meaning such that everything was seen as a kind of spiritual practice or having a religious dimension to it, like hunting and fishing, cultivating crops, building shelters, etc. The Indigenous worldview didn't separate their life into categories like secular and sacred, the religious and the non-religious, like we Westerners do. They don't do it like that, or they didn't do it like that. I think there is something about European culture and the European worldview that is inherently reductionistic and hierarchical and, and needs to categorize everything and assign everything its proper place, define and label it, categorize it, separate it, fragment it, reduce it. That's been part of European culture and history for a long time, reaching a culmination in the Enlightenment, the scientific age. And the assumption is that the world is naturally broken up and fragmented like this, when it's not. The assumption is that we as human beings are broken up and fragmented like this. We have the spiritual side and the physical side, the spiritual side of our lives, the sacred side, the holy side, what you do on Sunday mornings and what you do during the rest of the week. We fragment ourselves in our world like this. It's a very Western, European, and very Christian, unfortunately. Maybe not originally, but it certainly has become throughout the Middle Ages and the Age of Enlightenment in Europe. That's our heritage. It's not true. It's a false story. We're not fragmented and broken up this way, and our world isn't. And this is a lesson we can take from our Indigenous brothers and sisters this weekend, and that of our own ancient ancestors. Our own ancient ancestors saw all of life as connected and fluid and coherent, And I think this is our natural spiritual state. And the more that we can reclaim that and live into that, rediscover it, own it, I think the better off we're going to be, the more strength and resiliency we'll find today to meet the challenges of this moment. So that's my talk from this moment. Resiliency and strength, reimagining our religion, our spirituality, oneness and connection, that fluidity. But I want to hear where you're at. What are your ultimate concerns? Your ultimate convictions? What are you centering yourself on these days? How are you coping? How are you getting through this? What are you worried about? Yeah. Understand for you, Dorian.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been struggling with this a lot because everyone are, you know, I'm trying to find where I align, right? And I thought I aligned with most of the everybody around me, and I feel like everybody is at a point where it's like we just need to burn everything down the ground and like take a very militant stance, which is uh, like I get it, and I think I'm there too. And if push came to shove, I think I would take that route, so to speak. But you know, it also like sometimes I wonder how militant do I need to be,
Mm,
right? Like how do I need to fight everybody? Because I do have, I can have a temper, right? Like if digged into, right? Like I, but that's just me, right? I'm not someone who unfortunately I don't always walk away from confrontation, right? So so it I find myself sometimes I feel like am I not enough of someone who believes in these rights if I'm not actively you know essentially not lashing out at people, but like confronting people and just and yelling at the top of my lungs, and right. So I'm in a position where it's like I'm when we're talking about all this, right? And we are in a situation where we're slowly being taken over by a totalitarian regime, essentially.
I love how we just say that very casually now. And we're kind of in a situation where we're,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I'm struggling with like how with how I should be, I guess, because I already I have situations where I'm defending my beliefs, but then I have lots of friends who are like, we just need to burn it all to the ground and all this stuff. And but then I also have the question. It's like, are you going to burn it down to the ground? Or do you think like burning it down to the green ground means like some kind of like administrative, like,
Mm,
process where we all like can verbally, hopefully agree on stuff.
yeah.
And so I've, because again, like I find myself in a complicated feeling and space where it's like I don't know how confrontational to be. I don't know
I
how
hear you.
militant to be, and
Yeah.
like hearing this and like and then hearing people talk about it, but then also wondering it's like not I'm not saying that nobody here would stand up or anything like that. But it's like it's hearing people talk about it, and then but then like with the expectation of it will get done somehow.
Mm. Well, I think I hear what you mean, Dorian. I think it's a struggle we all have to wonder what's my part in all this. How do I resist? What does that actually look like? What is my level of responsibility? What am I capable of doing? What's right to do? What's wrong to do? How far is too far? Those are all the kind of questions we're wrestling with. And I don't have, no one here could give you an easy answer, but it's important to recognize that that is the struggle, and that we talk about this and address this in community, like right now, and look to, what does it look like to resist within community? What does it look like to resist as community rather than as individuals? You know, and maybe that's the better question. Max, did you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say very much along those lines. When I have felt like stuck in that sort of same place of like, okay, so what do I do? What do we do? Are we actually going to do this? I'm reminded of, first of all, the fact that, for better or worse, depending on your perspective, this is nothing new. Like, this is the struggle of humanity over time. It's progress followed by regression and authoritarianism and punishment. And then another wave, right, of people who are able to stand up to that or born into it and see a new way. And there's progress and there's regression, and it's just back and forth. So a lot of, and you mentioned earlier, Aaron, the leaders like from the civil rights era, and we have many people to look to who have done the work that we're talking about and thinking about now. And it's a helpful reminder that there are so many different ways to resist and to rebel. And Aaron, to your point, it's a communal response rather than an individual response, right? So I think we automatically think that everybody is a soldier, right, in a rebellion or a resistance. But soldiers need food and shelter and clothes and care and music and art. And right. So it's at least for me, it's helpful to remember that everybody can have a unique role, and not everybody has to be the ones carrying the torch, right, to burn it down. I mean, if that is what you feel like is your calling, then I think that's one thing. But I think there's so many ways to be supportive and to develop communities of care. I mean, that poem I read from is from a book called A Rebellion of Care. And it really is about like seeing all the different ways of, hey, it's an act of rebellion in our current day and age and in this current political climate. It's an act of rebellion to show literal empathy, right? It's an act of rebellion to be intentionally inclusive. It's an act of rebellion to care for one another, like beyond what we can gain from it. So all those little things I know probably don't feel like the same as marching in the streets and, having a physical violent reaction, but I would say are just as important in any struggle, in any resistance, in any rebellion. Everybody has a different part to play, and that doesn't make it any less important or effective. I think part of the reminder of hope, but also the reminder of why it feels so hard in the short term. This is not going to be fast, and this is not going to be easy. I wish it were. Like, I wish it was as easy to rebuild community and all the things that we value as it was to destroy them. But it takes a long time. It takes cultivation. It takes planting and nurturing and growing these seeds of all the things that we care about. And so I I don't like that that's the case, but it's a good reminder of when it feels like, why aren't we doing something? There's also the practical sense that literally, right, like we live in a country that is the most powerful, most technologically advanced, most militarized police force, ICE, military, fill in the blanks, that's ever existed ever. So the idea of us as normal citizens, even those that are armed, like putting up an actual, violent response and being successful is in some ways just completely absurd. And so it's a good reminder that we're not really at a place to do much else than to develop community and to nurture one another and to care for one another and to instill in those that are still able to learn and grow the value of standing up to and resisting the forces of hatred and racism and all the bigotry that we see every day. So at least that's been helpful for me.
Good stuff. Yeah, Jason.
I really thought about putting it. I'm glad I did that.
Not big on religion these days, but
Why not?
But I have been the last 6 months or so really getting into mindfulness meditation, and it's been really interesting. And there's this last week or so, I've been starting to do loving kindness meditation, which is apparently it's very old, but it has some of the themes in what you're talking about, to try to see people as being interconnected with other people. And it goes like this, goes, may I be free from suffering. May I be free from ill will. May I be filled with loving kindness. And may I be truly happy. And the trick to it is you start with yourself and you try to foster those feelings about yourself. And then you start to look at people that you care about. May Aaron be free from suffering. May Aaron be free from ill will. May Aaron be filled with loving kindness. May Aaron be truly happy. Then you start expanding it to people you don't really know, acquaintances, and then you start to do it for people you hate. May Donald Trump be free from suffering. May he be free from ill will. May he be filled with loving kindness. May he be truly happy. And when you put that on, it has the potential to change your perspective on how you approach all this stuff that's happening. If Hitler was treated with loving kindness, was filled with loving kindness, if we could get that into him, would things have turned out differently? I don't know. But yeah, I guess I'm agreeing with you that it's important for us to, I think, try to believe that we're not just individual units all separate out there, but that we're all the same. We are this society. We are America. We are the world. We are humanity. And if you meditate on that, I think it brings you into the present a little bit more and brings you a little bit of peace.
That's beautiful. Can you repeat that again? The may you part?
Yeah, it's may we be free from suffering.
Yeah.
I like to do it like this. May we be free from suffering. May we be free from ill will. May we be filled with loving kindness. And may we be truly happy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I firmly believe that the world would be so much a better place if we really lived out that prayers. It's a kind of a prayer.
Kind of, yeah.
Would the world be perfect? Would the Hitlers not exist? No, I think the Hitlers would still exist because there's people who are just psychopathic and, but would 99% of the world would be better? Yeah, I think so. I think that's beautiful. And I think as, not just as people of faith who claim Christ, but basically just as empathetic human beings, emotionally intelligent, empathetic human beings invested in each other's humanity, so to speak. That's it. That's our gospel.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. No, that's really great, Jason. And yeah, it's preaching nonviolence. I love that part. I think, that's really important today as well. Good stuff. Somebody else want to share anything? Yeah, Sarah, please.
This isn't really fleshed out or anything, but I just want to say thank you to Max for everything you said. I've been really struggling with guilt of not doing enough or doing anything, really. Like when Donald Trump was first elected, I marched. Nobody cared. We all knew he was a predator and a molester and a misogynist, and nobody cared. It wasn't enough. Kids were shot in schools, and it wasn't enough. Nobody cared. And so I've just been feeling really powerless, and I've just kind of not been doing much.
Yeah.
I'll have difficult conversations if I'm in that situation. I'm always going to say what I believe in and speak out. But other than that, I haven't really been doing much. And it's hard because I am a woman and I am a Latina woman, and I just feel kind of in danger. So I don't know. I don't really do a lot, and I've been feeling really guilty about it. And so I just want to say thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a really weird position to be in. I want to do more, but I don't really know how. And so I've just been focusing as much as I can on loving myself and loving others and putting that energy out. And that sounds like woo-woo and bullshit, but that's all I have right now.
It's all really any of us have.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's really honest and good. Good. Thank you, Sarah, for being vulnerable like that. And yeah, thank you. Hey,
I want to add one small thing to that.
yeah.
To that feeling of like fatigue, that
Yes.
I think everybody kind of feels to a degree. That I feel like it's really, it could be potentially distressing to think of it in this way, but I do think like we're in the midst of like a generational kind of struggle in that I think all of us wish it could have been like, man, we woke up from that nightmare in 2021 and then it was all over and he disappeared and went into the rearview mirror and everything returned to normal. But that's not the struggle that we're in. He is an expression of a sickness that has developed not only in America, but evidently in other parts of the Western world. Historians of later generations can figure out how this all happened to us.
Yeah.
But it is happening to us. And it's something that will take many years of struggle I think to get through. It's going to be a painful road. And it's kind of tragic that this happened for all of us. And, that we're the ones that are around for this, but there are other generations that suffered through much worse, who suffered through global wars and these kinds of things. And I think we just have to accept that it's like, especially like growing up in, for me, I grew up in the 80s and 90s and, which was an amazingly, in retrospect, an amazingly wonderful and peaceful time.
Yeah.
To have my most of my adolescence.
Yeah. We laughed.
Yeah.
We didn't appreciate it like we do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think I didn't really have the perspective at that time. But that's the reality, and it does require just sort of a constant commitment to the struggle, and it will make a difference. But it's just not, unfortunately, this is not a struggle that we're just going to wake up some morning and then it's just dissipated, completely. It's going to take years for all of this to sort of work its way through. But the daily kind of struggle for it and doing things like going to protests and being as active as you're able to. It's not like you have to be at every single thing all the time, constantly,
There's an opportunity coming up on Saturday, I heard.
Yes, next Saturday, I think. Yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be
Millions
an important one. Yeah. But that stuff makes a difference in the long run. It really does, And so I feel like you can take some energy from that, and not feel defeated, even though you'll wake up on next Sunday after maybe going to the protest and there's going to be some horrible news getting announced again. He's going to say some more horrible stuff on Monday, and then you're going to be back on that that sort of grim cycle again. But it's like I really do believe it makes a difference, and the struggle can be won, but it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, no, it's really good, and I just keep hearing this theme that I just want to focus on, and it is about leaning into love, leaning into community, leading into the relationships in your lives, like the ones in this room, that inspire you and encourage you at this time to, again, just as Abe and Sarah were saying, just to do the best you can, and just to be, and just be a support to each other, like you're being in this room this morning. This too is resistance, even in a tiny little community like this one. That's the best we can do. It's beautiful. And it's something you will never forget. Be encouraged. You're doing the work. You're doing the work and you're doing great. Let's conclude our time with our benediction, which is part of this whole theme this morning. Let's say this together now. As we go from this place, we commit ourselves to the path of love, honesty, and humility. We dedicate ourselves as Christ did to the cause of justice, the courageous embrace of this life, this world, each other. Amen. Thanks for being here, resistors. Go in peace. What'd you say? Thanks for listening in on this week's edition of the Central Cast. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you join us next time. Bye-bye.